once again Norman with the Transportation Hub YouTube channel. And what do we have here today? Now, I didn't know about this yesterday, and I just heard about it as of this morning. Brooklyn, MTA, you guys are crazy. Y'all are some next level crazy. What we have here today, this is an emergency commentary, ladies and gentlemen. What we have here today is the MTA's split decision recommended by Brooklyn Congress, by the congressmen, by the representative, state senate, Congress people of Brooklyn. Oh, by the way, this commentary is presented to you by the Brooklyn Paper. We fused with Brooklyn Daily to form Kings County's ultimate local news source. So, shout out for Brooklyn Paper for recommending me this news story right here. I'm going to do a commentary on. The MTA must again separate R train service between Manhattan and Brooklyn. Demanded and recommended by local politicians in Brooklyn. Now, as we see in this image right here is the R160R train at J Street Metrotech with the 4th Avenue local program signage. Now remember back in 2013, throughout 2014, when the Montague Tube, where the R train travels between Brooklyn and Manhattan, sometimes used by the W train, and was formerly used by the Brown M train that used to go down to southern Brooklyn during rush hours. Remember that tube got closed for approximately 14 months. It got shut down from August 2013 all the way to September 2014, because originally they were slated to reopen the tube back from October 2014, but they reopened the tube a month early. And remember when we had a vast majority of R160s ruling the R train, like that legit. We had a vast majority of the R train fleet at the time. Vast majority of R160s, with some of them R46s. They were dominating the R train line. Because as you remember, during weekday hours, the R trains operated in two sections. The first section between Forest Hill 71st Avenue and Whitehall Street. And please note, the W train was still discontinued at that time. W train service did not come back until 2 years later. So W train service operated between 71st Avenue, Forest Hills, and Queens, all the way down to Whitehall Street, South Ferry, and in Brooklyn, only between Court Street, downtown Brooklyn, and Bay Ridge, 95th Street. Because remember, the Montague Street tube tunnels was closed, and during weekends, R trains operated via the Manhattan Bridge in both directions between DeKalb Avenue and Canal Street, skipping stops in downtown Brooklyn and in lower Manhattan. And as well, you got the late night N train service operating via the bridge as well. And during late nights, R train service operated as a shuttle between Bay Ridge 95th Street and Sunset Park 36th Street, entirely in Brooklyn, in the Sunset Park section of Brooklyn. Okay? So apparently, word just came out that the local politicians want to split the R train in half, just like how we had it back in 2013, 2014 during the Montague Street tube closures. All right, so let's dig deep into this. Let's dig deep into this story. Okay, call it another Southern Succession. Call it another Southern Succession. the Metropolitan Transportation Authority must again consider separating our train service between Brooklyn and Manhattan in order to immediately reduce commute times for Southern Brooklynites who ride the beleaguered line. The beleaguered line. The beleaguered line. A quartet of politicians demanded in a letter that they fired off to the chairman of the state-run agency. For years, the R train has suffered from inexcusable delays, poor service change, and sudden schedule shifts. The politicians wrote in their February 15th missive, "We believe we have a solution that is reliably cheap, quick to implement, and has successfully reduced the delays in the past." Representative Mike Rose, Representative Max Rose, and we all know who Max Rose is. He is the veteran who beat out Dan Donovan in last year's election to run both Staten Island and to run all of Staten Island and parts of southern Brooklyn. Representative Max Rose, Democratic from Bay Ridge, State Senator Andrew Gonardes, Democrat from Bay Ridge, and Assemblywoman Maviv Frontus, Democrat, Coney Island. But the R doesn't really serve Coney Island, so what does that have to do with you? I'm just saying. Not to be rude. And Councilman Justin Brannan, Democrat from Bay Ridge, all signed the letter sent to the Transportation Authority bigwig Andy Byford, who runs the agency's local arm, the New York City Transit Authority, who runs one of the MTA's sub-agencies, the New York City Transit Authority. Or they could have said New York City Transit, but anyway, it's good. NYCT, NYCTA. That's what we used to go back in the 90s and way before then. Last May, Byford announced his so-called Fast Forward plan to modernize the city's beleaguered transit system, a $40 billion scheme that calls for upgrading the R train's nearly century-old signal infrastructure. One of the main lines caused delays, along with expanded accessibility to subway stations and adding hundreds of new subway cars and city buses within the next decade. But the plan, which is not fully funded, notes that the signal upgrades will not be made along the R line for at least 5 years. It will not even then extend down, and even will not extend south of downtown's DeKalb Avenue station. And those provisions are neither quick nor comprehensive enough, according to the politicians. Putting South Brooklyn through another 10 years of commuting nightmare is simply not an option, they wrote. It's time for us to think outside the box. A more viable solution, the foursome proposed, would be to split the R train service again between the two boroughs at downtown Brooklyn's Court Street Station, which the agency did between August 2013 and September 2014, while workers repaired the repairing the lines East River spanning Montague Street Tunnel in the aftermath of Superstorm Sandy. During that time, Manhattan-bound Southern Brooklyn strap hangers on weekdays freely transferred to the 4 or 5 trains to continue their journeys to the distant aisle, and on weekends took the R line over the Manhattan Bridge into the R boroughs, where the trains then followed the N train's routes. The previous bifurcation into unexpected success was an unexpected success, the politicians said, because it sealed because it siloed Southern Brooklyn riders from the delays that occurred in citywide stops along the R line, claims support by this newspaper's reporting at the time. By bifurcating the R train, Bay Ridge commuters no longer being delayed due to sick passenger up in Queens, legislators wrote. And the one-time R train commuter enthusiastically agreed, saying the previous division of service made her daily commute from her home in Bay Ridge to her downtown office a breeze because the local R trains was far less crowded. It was the best commute I ever had in my life, and I was so angry when they took it back when they went back to normal service. Said Brooklyn paper assignment editor Courtney Donahue. When I was leaving work at night, there was no one on the train because Court Street was the first stop. Well, of course there was no one on the train. The tunnel was shut down due to repairs at the fix of the damage that Hurricane Sandy caused, lady. What do you expect? You were so happy then. Don't be so shook when they finish reconstruction work and then everything goes back to normal. Alright. A Metropolitan Authority spokesman did not immediately reply to inquiries about whether or not the agency honchos would heed the politician's request to study the bifurcation. How much would the service split cost, and whether or not the southern portion of Brooklyn, the R line, would ever receive signal upgrades? Well, here's the thing. If you guys look back to my comments, if you guys look back to my fast forward guide to monetizing the subway system, the 4th Avenue line in South Brooklyn will be monetized. We'll have CBTC installation within 5 years after the first set of subway lines. After the first set of subway lines, we'll get CBTC as well. Alright? Okay, and now, it was great at the time between September 2013 and August 2014 when the MTA split the route into two separate sections and made the route a whole during weekend time via the Manhattan Bridge, as well as the N trains traveling over the Manhattan Bridge. But we gotta look at the facts, ladies and gentlemen. This R train split, it will not work. And I'll tell you why. It's not gonna happen and it will not work. Chances are it will not work, and I will tell you why. Because if you do split the R train into two separate sections, again, just like you did when the hurricane, when fixing 45 rehabilitation work was being done on the Montague Street tubes, it may be good for Southern Brooklyn riders, yes, but we gotta look at the facts, family. We gotta look at the facts, Hub family. At Whitehall Street, right? At Whitehall Street, right? We have the W train that does this weekday evenings run between 6 a.m. and 11 p.m., which we're all happy for that, right? Correct? If you have the R trains terminating at Whitehall Street again during weekday times, just like back in September 2013 and October 2014, right? Correct? You're going to cause a whole bunch of delays and confusions and turmoil. Alright? Because both the R and the W trains cannot terminate at Whitehall Street at the same time. And you can't have W trains terminate at Canal Street either. Okay? Okay? Because I don't know, because it's a sip, y'all. It's a sip, y'all. Let me calm down. Let me calm down. I don't want to get beside myself because I want to sound like I don't know to say shit when I don't. The least that I'm sorry, let me change my tune. The least they can do is have the W trains cut back the W trains at Canal Street. No, 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 that won't work out either because terminating W trains at Canal Street will also cause losing confusion for the R trains as well because you don't want passengers who's running the W train, let's say they want to take it all the way down to Whitehall Street at the very least, right? Right? And they have to take the W train to Canal Street, get on the platform, wait for the R train that's possibly crowded, then the W train will have to shift tracks or whatever, and wait in layout until it gets called back into Canal Street, and then next thing you know, they get on the R train that's supposed to be going to Whitehall Street, and they get the announcement saying that the R trains are going to Brooklyn in order to get to downtown Brooklyn and to continue your trip on this R train line. But worst case scenario, you have to take the either worst case scenario, you would have to use the free out of system transfer to the 4 and 5 trains at Bowling Green using your Metro card, taking the 4 and 5 to Borough Hall, and then catch the R train right at Court Street. Or the worst case scenario, you get off at Portland Street, walk through the passageway to World Trade Center Chambers Street, transfer to the Brooklyn bound ARC trains to J Street Metrotech, and catch the R train from there. So that'll be a whole bunch of confusion and make rigmarole for passengers. And just like how Brooklyn paper assignment editor Courtney Donahue may have enjoyed the route split, other people may not have enjoyed the route split as well. It may be convenient and enjoyable for her, but it may not be convenient convenient and enjoyable for other people who use that subway line as well. So that's why I think it's a bad idea to split the R and W train, to split the R trains between Brooklyn and Manhattan, and especially considering the fact that we New Yorkers spent so much money on the transit system to bring back the W line. It's not. Listen. We spent way too much money in this transit system just for them to mess up service. Okay, and with fare hikes coming out, people, we really need to get our heads and our brains attached, and we gotta keep it together because not only do we spend money and protest it to bring back the W train into service, but we also just advised not long ago for the MTA to bring overnight R train service to Whitehall Street, Manhattan, so that people get off from work very late in southern Brooklyn could have access to two late night 4th Avenue local subway lines. You got your N train that goes through the tunnels every night, and you got your R train that extended from 36th Street Sunset Park from Brooklyn all the way up to Whitehall Street, Lower Manhattan. Has these local politicians forgot about that? Do they have their heads so far behind their butts that they forgot that we have the W train, which also uses the Montague tube? Some W trains uses that Montague tube to go into Brooklyn, during rush hours, some trips during rush hours, midday, early afternoon, early rush hours, and one trip I believe goes through the tunnel in the evening time all the way down to Brooklyn. Have we forgot about that? I hope not. And so family, that's why I believe that splitting the R train into two sections will not be a very good idea because we spent way too much money. The money is not also coming from Albany, it is also coming out from our pockets because we people are the ones paying for this service. It is not just New York City Transit also. We pay services for Long Island Railroad, Metro North. We even, for those of us who drive, we even use our Easy Pass just to go through the bridges and tunnels. That's where the money for funding the MTA, as well as bringing new trains, new buses, new infrastructure, new signal improvements, new signal improvements are coming from. It's coming from us, our pockets. We're the ones who are paying this service. Okay? So we want you guys to think long and hard before we make any drastic changes. That's the reason why I believe this R train splitting into two sections is not a very good idea. And also it will also allow the Montague tubes to be very unused. Okay, it will leave the Montague tubes very vacant. We already have a vacancy of the Montague tubes from the BMT Nassau Street Side line. All right, because ever since the Brown M train got discontinued back in 2010, we've had a discontinuation of service between Broad Street, Lower Manhattan, and Court Street, downtown Brooklyn. We don't want no discontinuation between Whitehall Street, South Ferry, and Court Street in Brooklyn. All right, so that's the reason I believe why this R train split is not a very good idea. So comment down below and tell me what you guys think. Do you guys think it's a good idea for the R train to be split into two separate routes? Yes or no, and explain why in the comments down below. This is Norman with the Transportation Hub YouTube channel commentary, signing off. Blessings and have a blessed day.